Hey everybody, welcome back to CAF's Heroes of Sport. My name is Bob Babbitt, co-founder of Challenged Athletes Foundation. Every week we get to meet and chat with one of our amazing challenged athletes. You've probably seen him, all over the internet. He has been People Magazine, you name it. Mr. Zach Sherman joins us from, now he's in seclusion. He's because the crowds are just all over him. We needed to get him away. Zach, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. So first I want to go back before the injury. What were your sports? What were you into?
So before my injury, I obviously did snowboard. That's something I've done since I was in middle school. I was an avid rock climber. Ever since college, actually my gym credits in college were for rock climbing.
Sweet.
It kind of fueled my passion for that. I played volleyball in high school, and I also loved shooting pool, like billiards.
Nice. And so take me through what happened when you were on the motorcycle. And that's, when we started our foundation for a gentleman who was originally injured on his motorcycle. So we've seen a lot of injuries that come along. Doesn't matter how safe you are as a rider. You got a couple 1,000-pound car that can change your life in about a quarter of a second. So what happened to you?
Yeah, so the night of my accident, I was at a friend's house and they were having a party. I was 25 at the time, and I was trying to be responsible. I was like, I don't want to drink and drive. Why don't we all go downtown where I lived? And that's where all the bar scene was in the Harrisburg area. And we decided to all kind of carpool downtown, and we would all just drink there, and then I could just walk home.
Right.
So I was trying to be responsible about it. And, not everybody fit in my friend's SUV. So I'm like, well, I can ride my bike because I haven't been drinking. And me and my buddy got on our motorcycles and we were headed downtown, and we kind of look over at each other and you give the nod, oh yeah, we're going to show off a little bit, we're going to drive a little fast and reckless. So we started speeding up, going down the road, and I got what's known as a speed wobble on the bike, where you just start to shimmy a little bit. And I tried to speed out of the speed wobble because that's really the only way to right that situation when it starts. And my friend said it looked like I hit a pothole because the front end of the bike just dug into the ground and I just started front flipping down the highway. And that's the last thing I remember was right before I started to flip, just thinking, please land in the grass, I woke up, I don't know how much later, but they took my helmet off of me when the paramedics got there. They took my helmet off, and I just remember waking up and being like, my name's Zach Sherman. I'm allergic to penicillin. I'm a diabetic. Call my mom. And that's the last thing I remember until I woke up a few weeks later in the hospital, and they had told me that I'd lost both of my legs and my arm.
So I remember reading somewhere where you were you were trying to scratch your nose with your right arm.
Yeah, I was trying to use my right arm because I was right arm dominant, and I remember just reaching up trying to scratch it, and I couldn't. And my left arm was in a restraint because I was in a medically induced coma, and I kept pulling the oxygen tubes and the feeding tubes out, so they had to restrain my only other arm. Which just made me very confused. You're on a lot of pain meds when you're in the hospital, and they kind of had to keep telling me, oh yeah, you were in a motorcycle accident. I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember now.
So when something like that happens, there'll be people around you for a period of time, right? Parents are there, everybody's around you, but then there's some point where you're just like, okay, it's time to move on. What was the lowest point for you during that transition from the hospital to basically everyday life?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it came a lot later for me because I did spend so much time in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 6 months, followed by a physical rehab for 2 months, followed by another surgery back in the hospital, another rehab facility, another surgery, another rehab facility. So for the first 3 years after my accident, there wasn't much time spent at home alone with my thoughts. You know, it was always recovery, rehab, recovery, rehab. But there did come a point where I was having trouble with my vision, and we didn't know if it was related to my accident or not. And after the first opinion I got, I didn't like the results, so I went and got a second opinion from a retina specialist. It turned out that I had what's known as diabetic retinopathy. And the doctor was like, we need you in the hospital tomorrow morning for an emergency eye surgery, or your vision might not last the month.
Oh my God. Not like you're not dealing with enough already.
Yeah. So, you know, I was it was a very low point for me. I remember calling my best friend and being like, you know, I've been strong through the amputations, through all the other traumas that I endured. But if I lose my vision on top of that, I was like, I don't think I want to be here anymore, you know? And I just remember that being a very low point, and like all of my friends being like, I can't say I blame you, because at that point, like, that's just so many different things to work through. You know, you have your diabetes, you have the amputations, and then if you would lose your vision, like, that would just be a lot. You know what I mean?
Well, you'd feel like I can't be self-sufficient.
I
always need someone around me potentially. That's
and that was really hard for me, because I was a very independent kid from a young age. I moved out of the house when I was 18 and was just very independent throughout my young adulthood, I guess you could say. So to be back in a place where, you know, I had to live at home or I had to live in a rehab facility was hard enough. But then when it came down to, oh, you also might lose your vision, you know, that was kind of, I think, the lowest point for me.
And so obviously you have your vision. So the surgery was successful.
Surgery was successful. You know, there's always drawbacks to every surgery, but the outcome is as positive as it could be. My diabetes is better managed now than it has been for the last 30 years. So that's saying a lot. You know, technology has helped with that. I have an insulin pump, as well as like a CGM sensor that reads my blood sugar every 3 minutes. And just the technology with that has come such a long way.
So from watching the video piece, obviously you've taken the prosthetics legs that you have and figured out how to adapt them to snowboarding. Take me through that in terms of that process, because what you've created is pretty novel.
Yeah, so it was actually a very long process, and not being familiar with prosthetics in the beginning of my recovery, you know, it was a very long process, just for the simple fact that I didn't know anything about anything. So you go to a couple events, you go to the Amputee Coalition's conference, you go to CAF running clinics, you meet some people. And someone's like, oh, well, I think this foot would work for you. And then someone's like, oh, well, if you paired it with this might work. And then I met a gentleman by the name of Reggie Showers. I don't know if you know who Reggie is.
I think, is he a double?
He's a bilateral below knee amputee.
Yes, and he's a track guy.
Yeah, and he actually was a motorcycle drag racer after the fact that he lost his legs, you know. Oh, so it was kind of one of those birds of a feather type deal, you know. And he was like, you know, you need to get out to the ski spectacular in Colorado. He's like, there's great instructors out there. It's a great program. If anybody can get you snowboarding, they can. So that following year, I applied for a CAF grant, and it helped get me out to the ski spectacular. I met some great coaches that first year. I had a preliminary idea in mind when I went out there. We had like a carbon fiber 3D printed prosthetic foot that I thought was going to work. You know, it had a step-in binding built into the foot. I was really excited about it. We get out there and it broke like the first day on the snow. And luckily, because of the networking and everything that goes on there, Zach Harvey, a prosthetist out of Colorado, was there. And he's like, hey, I have a snowboard set up you can borrow until you get your stuff figured out. And I ended up going with that. It didn't go well the first day. I was very frustrated, being someone that was part of that sport for so many years before my accident, and then coming back, and it's not like riding a bike at all. It's like riding a bicycle on fire upside down underwater.
Which is easy. Anybody can do that.
Anybody can do that, right? But it was a lot of trial and error that first week. And by the end of the week, I was very excited for where things potentially could go. You know what I mean?
So I'm sure as a snowboarder, Shaun White is the guy, right? 5-time Olympian, 3-time gold medalist. The guy's done everything, more X Games medals than anybody else. So take me that day. You're at Park City at Woodward Park, and what were you planning to just go out with your coach? What was the plan for that day?
Yeah, so the CAF was generous enough to bring me out to Utah. And the day before, me and my coach had gone to Park City, the resort, on our own, just to kind of test out my gear, make sure everything was working, just see how things were going. And we met up with another bilateral amputee that I had also helped get snowboarding using the same feet that I used to snowboard. So it was kind of a cool day. I got to snowboard with him. All the nerves kind of died. The next day we get to Woodward. I'm feeling very confident. We're all in the parking lot getting geared up,
Yep.
And I'm there with Christy from CAF.
Yep.
And the film crew. And I'm like, well, this is weird that they're filming all this. And I had like this sinking suspicion that something else was going on that I just didn't know about, But we got up on the hill. Woodward, if you've never been to one of their facilities, is amazing. There's one lift. It's very, there's not a whole lot of people there throughout the day. So it's very just like no lift lines, no traffic on the hill. And it's a great facility. We got out there. We were the first ones down the hill. We're going on the freshly groomed runs. The first run, I was a little tight. My coach looked at me and he's like, are you like just a little tight this morning? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just a little nervous, first run jitters. So we take a few more runs and then they're like, hey, why don't we just sit down here at the bottom and wait for a few minutes? And I was like, well, what's going on now? And sure enough, like a couple minutes later, this guy starts walking up to us dressed in all black from head to toe. And I just remember looking at my coach. I'm like, that kind of looks like Shaun White. And he walks up and he pulls his face mask down and lifts his goggles. He's like, hey, man, I'm Shaun. And I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. Like everybody knows who Shaun White is. He's a household name when it comes to snowboarding.
When it comes to anything.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So then you get on the chairlift with the guy, and I'm sure you're thinking, oh, when I get off the lift, do not take Shaun White out when I get off the lift here.
I was worried from the second he was next to me, like, don't hit him with my outrigger that I use getting on the lift. Like, don't fall in front of him getting off the lift. You're just going to embarrass yourself and take out, a guy that's probably worth more money than you can possibly imagine. And as soon as I got off the lift and didn't fall in front of him, I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm good.
The jitters are gone. Let's do some snowboarding.
I love it. And the video of you guys snowboarding. So when you guys were on the lift, where was the cameraman?
We had one cameraman on the lift with us. I think there was one cameraman at the top of the hill, and then there was one on the chairlift behind us.
Oh my!
So it was quite the ordeal.
I love it. And just when you think about that, you're going down a hill with Shaun White, right? And you're not falling down. You're boarding. He's boarding. You guys go down the half pipe, and he's doing a few jumps. Just how cool was that experience? It's hard to put it into words, because the time as it was happening, right, I'm going down the hill in front of him because he wants to see me snowboard. And the whole time I'm just like, well, I want him to go down the hill in front of me because I just want to watch him snowboard, You never get this chance twice. So we kind of kept trading. Like I would take a couple of turns and then I'd slow down and I'd watch him go past. And then he'd take a couple of turns and slow down and watch me go past. And then he's like, well, do you want to go over to the half pipe? And I'm like,
I can't go down a half pipe. Like, are you crazy? I don't have the suspension under my legs. And that's something I've been fighting with for a few years now, is I just don't have a suspension component. So my back and my pelvis take all the beating as I'm going down the hill. So he was like, oh, just
go down the middle.
Snowboard down the middle. He's like, and I'll do tricks up the walls, up the vertical walls. And I was like, okay. So he's going down, he's doing these tricks, and I'm just trying to like watch him do these tricks, And I'm like, no, I got to focus, because like if I fall right now, he's going to run me over.
He's going to land on me.
So like I didn't want him to land on me because, he's 10, 20 feet out of the half pipe at this point, and I'm just in awe because, I've watched him since I was a kid on TV. We're about the same age. He's only 2 years younger than me. And just seeing a guy that I've watched since the late 90s just absolutely dominate the sport that I love so much, it was just absolutely surreal,
Love it.
I wanted to just keep watching him all day. Like I would have just followed him around like a lost puppy. But he had stuff to do, and I was getting tired at this point. But we get down to the bottom, and they're like, well, we have another surprise for you. And I'm just like, how could this day get any better? Like Shaun's going to be like, and a brand new car, like what could possibly be next? And that's when CAF was nice enough to award me with a grant for the upcoming season. And that's absolutely amazing, because without their support, I wouldn't be where I've gotten in snowboarding so far.
So what, when the People magazine, it gets picked up, goes viral, how do you hear from people that you hadn't heard from in years?
Yes, it was kind of interesting. I had people tagging me in Instagram posts and Facebook posts and just messaging me like, are you kidding me? Like, you were snowboarding with Shaun White? And I'm like, yeah, just another Tuesday on the hill, nothing crazy. And then whenever CAF did the press release and the video went out on YouTube, I woke up the next morning and my Instagram had blown up. There was like 400 or 500 more followers and comments and likes. And I was just like, this is almost too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Cause you feel like you got to answer everybody.
Yeah.
This is a full-time job. I need an assistant now.
I was like, well, what do I do now? And my friend's like, I don't know, start a TikTok and just see how viral you can go at this point.
It's so funny. So what are the goals? So you have a coach. Are the goals to get into some competitions? What are you thinking?
So from the beginning, I've always said I would love to make it to the Paralympics, not to be, the best and medal. And, that would be, icing on the cake if something like that were to happen. But I think bringing attention to the fact that there are people that are bilateral above knee amputees out there that still want to snowboard, but there's not a prosthetic foot on the market. There's not a category in the Paralympics for me to even compete. If I were to compete, I would have to compete against people that have two knees. And that seems like a tremendous advantage in a sport that's very high impact, So I think my goals first would be to make enough people aware of it and get enough people snowboarding that there could be a classification for it down the road. Whether I get to compete or not, I think that would be the utmost importance. And just like a legacy I'd like to see is we wouldn't have gotten there without Zach's help and without him kind of paving the way.
Well, what's fascinating about that, Zach, is we had that same situation with the kid whose picture's behind me with Rudy Garcia Tolson, double above knee amputee. They didn't have a category for him in swimming. And, so we had basically had to find people around the world to eventually get that category. So he had to go out and try to recruit people who were going to kick his butt. Right. He needed to find people who could kick his butt because he needed people in all these different countries to get there. Yep. So it's possible. It's happened over and over and over again. So it's just these getting your story out there makes people realize that, there are double amputees out there who are snowboarding or who would like to snowboard. And because of you and Shaun White and the awareness now's the time to get people to hopefully open up that classification.
And it's funny you mentioned that. Like, just before I hopped on this interview, I had another young man reach out to me, and he's like, Zach, this is amazing. It's been a dream of mine to snowboard forever, you know?
Yep.
And I was like, well, here's what I use. Here's the components. I'm more than happy to share any knowledge I can with you. I'll mentor you in any way I can. And, you know, if you could make it out to the Ski Spectacular event that I go to every year, I'll be there and we can get you up on a snowboard, and I'll at least be there to kind of be like, oh, well, you need to try this, or you need to adjust this, or you need to.
Yep.
There's a lot of tricks of the trade that I'm willing to share, but you got to hold a little bit back for yourself. So you still have that little bit of competitive advantage, right? Like, you can't give away all the trade secrets.
But you want to be the catalyst. You want to bring people in. But
Yeah.
You don't want to be looking up at them on the podium.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like with Mike Schultz, right? Like, he developed a whole prosthetic line. A lot of people in the Paralympics at that level are using his prosthetic knee.
Right.
And he's still dominating in that sport. And you got to be like, how is he doing this? He's 40, you know, and still kicking butt with kids half his age. So I hope that one day there's a classification for us and people, you know, want to watch, and the Paralympics, you know, allows that to happen.
So how important has CF been in this journey for you?
I mean, they've been there since day one. I met Travis at the amputee camp that I went to through the Amputee Coalition.
Uh-huh.
And that first year, he's like, well, apply for a grant, man. He's like, you know, if you need equipment, we'll help get, you know, the prosthetic equipment that you need, or the snowboard that you need, or a travel grant to travel and get coaching and training that you need. And every year since, you know, CAF has been there for me, whether it be equipment, whether it be coaching. And honestly, as a guy on a fixed income, currently I'm just living off of my disability check. And that makes a huge difference every year. That makes or breaks whether I make it to Ski Spec, or whether I make it, you know, to Vermont or out west, or anywhere where one of my adaptive coaches is at, to help facilitate me becoming a better athlete.
I love it. Hey, Zach, thanks for taking time. I know you've got, you know, a full itinerary now that you got, you know, you got Shaun White on the phone, so you can call him anytime. Thanks for taking time. Thanks for being part of the CAF family. I love this. Probably one of the better videos that I've seen. Just so well done. And I'm sitting there watching it going, where's the cameraman at? They're on this chairlift. Is this guy hanging from somewhere? Where's this guy? It was so well shot and so well done and so just authentic. It was about as pure as you could get.
Yeah, I really appreciate, I think it was called Sideways Media or Sideways Films, being there. And they're both great people. You know, we palled around for the first day that I was out there too. And the content they put out, and just the quality of telling my story the way I wanted it to be told, not just copy and pasted from somewhere else. You know, it was great.
I love it. Zach, thanks so much for taking time, and hopefully we'll see you at some event here down the line.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
All right. Zach Sherman has been our guest, everybody. This is CAF Heroes of Sport. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. See ya.
See ya.